We've got corn being sprayed with herbicide, corn being side dressed with 32% UAN nitrogen, and corn being hauled with a semi-truck. 2 semi-trucks, as a matter of fact. Barring any unforeseen circumstances with this 9200 that we've had all sorts of transmission problems with, which I'm about to give a good test. This truck has been sitting inside since we brought it home from I-70 truck repair. We had some issues with the power. It turned out to be a dead battery. I think that was probably the boss's fault. He didn't admit to it, but I read between the lines. We made it out of the barn. It's a small victory, a long war. Here comes the fun part. Putting $500 worth of diesel fuel in this thing. For about 2 short weeks there, the price of fuel started to creep back down from its wartime highs, and it shot right back up to where it was, if not farther. Diesel fuel at the pump, not the farm pump, but at a gas station in town, it's close to $5.50 or $5.60 a gallon. More expensive than gasoline. Historically, diesel is usually cheaper than gasoline a lot of times, or at least for the last few years. That's not the case anymore. And these machines, our tractors, our combines, our semi-trucks, they burn a lot of diesel fuel. Hey, there's a side dress barn. Between putting fuel in the semi-truck and nitrogen on our corn, you're looking at a lot of money in a close proximity. The bin site we're about to haul corn out of really got damaged last fall by the grain cart operator. Totally not me. Jeff just called me and said that some of the new rock we put down was a little too loose and his semi-truck's hung up on it. So I'm gonna take the chain and my pickup truck over there and maybe we can just pop them off of that real quick. Good start to the day. I think it's Monday, but it's actually Tuesday. Might as well shut this off. He's waiting on a tow. He wasn't so much stuck as he was just hung up on the fresh rock in the mud. We're gonna run the backhoe up there real quick, level some of those ruts out. And he's gonna try and load. This is just one of those bin sites that you either haul in the thick frozen ground in the winter, or you come out here in July when it's bone dry. Anywhere in between, it's going to be a mess. Obviously we have fresh rock on top, but there's no road pack or any kind of foundation under the rock. It's mud. So it's going to take a few loads just to get that rock packed in, and then probably a few loads of rock on top of it to make that settle. When it comes to fuel prices, the question as a farmer to ponder, are you okay paying $5 for diesel fuel when corn, old crop corn, is almost worth $8 a bushel. Because you're gaining a lot more in the $8 per bushel of corn than you're losing from the $5 per gallon of diesel fuel. To paint the whole picture though, diesel fuel is not really the input cost that's the problem. It's fertilizer. That's the main issue. That's jumped over 100%, in some cases 150. Some may argue that that is just pure price gouging, and I'm not going to disagree. Bill and Stan working on a tile hole. Old tiles, the gift that keep on giving. Meow. Okay, not a friendly cat. Nutrients out this morning, post-spraying some of our corn. The reason we have to post-spray this field in particular is because it has the Clearwater groundwater drinking wells. That's a cooperative that produces water for people in the area. Acuron, which is our standard herbicide program on almost all of our corn acres, has atrazine in it. We cannot spray atrazine within, I think, 100 yards or 150 yards of one of those pump houses. So, as opposed to just messing around and leaving a boundary, we spray a completely different product, in this case Acuron GT, that does not have that atrazine component. Still a high quality product, but we don't have to mess with those regulations. There goes nutrient to our next field. We've got 3 parcels they need to spray. Time for round 2. Other than the reliability of our automatic transmission, we actually have another hurdle right now preventing us from hauling, and it's that sticker right there. You can see in reverse 422 means it expired in April of 2022. That sticker is basically a certification safety sticker. Make sure your truck has been tested. I do think it's kind of a liability deal where they want you to make sure that your truck is in operating order, your air brakes work, your lights work, because if they don't want you driving a hazardous vehicle down the road hauling 80,000 plus pounds. If something goes wrong, people are going to get hurt. There's much less room for error in a semi truck than there is in a Mini Cooper. We head down to a guy on the north side of Effingham to do our truck testing. And this is a good opportunity to do a 65-mile-an-hour crop scouting tour on the way down. Did I say 65? I meant 55, officer. We don't go anything over the speed limit here. We just crossed the northern tip of Effingham County, and there's a substantial amount of ground down here not planted. I-70 truck repair, who has supposedly fixed our transmission, is right there. And the place we're going to have the truck tested is about a quarter mile to the southwest over there. Nice quick inspection, checks everything over on the truck, a lot of things that I would not know to check. We passed, and now we're headed back home to haul some corn. This right here, folks, is a place worth more than Fort Knox right now. Koch Industries and Hydrous Ammonia Terminal. The pipeline that feeds that actually crosses a lot of our farms. And I would say they've got millions of dollars of product in there, considering cash anhydrous is over $1,600 a ton right now. As it currently stands, we have an inch of rain in the forecast over the next day or two. We're wanting to get as much corn hauled out of this bin site as possible. These 3 bins are relatively untouched. We never got a chance this winter to come over here and core them, get better airflow. It's starting to warm up. We're getting into mid-spring. We're going to be approaching summer soon, and we're certainly already seeing warmer temperatures. Uncored bins that we haven't pulled loads out of the top to bring that cone down really stand the risk of spoiling if it warms up and there's any troublesome spots in them. So we're going to try and move as much of this corn out as possible. Overall, these 3 fully loaded corn bins should have maybe 65,000 bushels of corn in them. Cash corn prices right now are $7.75 a bushel, taken to the elevator and sold over the scales. We're not doing that, but if we were, that's what it'd be worth. So 65,000 bushels at almost $8 makes this close to $500,000 worth of corn in these 3 bins. As long as TGM and Neoga, where we're hauling, can keep up, Jeff and I together can actually move quite a bit of corn, especially when we're hauling out of bins with powerful out augers. We can load these trucks in 20 or 25 minutes, maybe make a 30-minute round trip to Neoga, which puts us at about 2 loads an hour between the 2 trucks. hard days of running, it might be 12 or 13 loads total. This corn right here came from that 120-acre field right to the north that suffers from water damage. It was underwater multiple times this year. The field that we installed that second 24-inch tile on to drain it. Be interested to see if this corn has a lower test weight than a lot of our other fields, just for the fact that it had all that water damage. Hello, old pal. Haven't been to TGM and yoga in a hot minute. I'm gonna run in real fast after they probe this and see what the test weight is on this corn. It weighed 57.5 pounds per bushel at 15.6% moisture, which is pretty darn good. I'm not saying that's great because I like to see 60-pound test weights on our corn. Everything being considered, especially with the farm this came from being so wet all year, I'll take that 57.5. Looks like our trailer needs a paint job. Starting to rust. Probably rock chips over the years. Needs sanded down and repainted. We're headed back to the bin site, hopefully for the second of many loads of corn today. I swear at least once a year I see a blimp somewhere around the farm, traveling very slowly. Just dropped another load of corn off. 58.3 pounds of test weight at 15.4% moisture. There's our third load haul through this truck. 15.3% moisture, 58.2 pounds of test weight. Fourth load of the day, 58.2 pounds of test weight at 15% moisture. I've continuously mentioned test weight, and I realize that I haven't given a refresher for those of you who are not familiar with what exactly test weight is. To put this in as simple of terms as possible for those of you who don't understand, test weight is simply the measure of the weight of a true volumetric bushel of corn. Eons ago, grains like corn were measured in bushels, not weight bushels, but volume bushels. They had a bushel basket, and when you filled up one of those baskets, that was a bushel of corn. That is a volumetric measurement. As we've modernized and mechanized things, volumetric measurements have proven to not be efficient or very easy to measure. Not to mention, processors and end users aren't using corn for packing peanuts. They're using it for the internal components, the starches, the carbohydrates, and everything in between. They wanted a standardized measuring system which was based on weight. That's where we make the transition to standardizing everything on measurement of bushels by weight. Subsequently, 1 bushel of corn is 56 pounds. That is purely a measurement over the scales. That way we don't have to go out there with a graduated cylinder and measure out a bushel of corn every single time we dump a little bit out of the truck. You can really just boil test weight down to how dense the corn is in weight. It is taking the old school volumetric bushel basket and equating that to how much actual weight is in that. Like I said, every corn's different, but what we're loading out right now is weighing about 58 pounds, give or take a little bit, per volumetric bushel. That's test weight. We've tested this truck pretty hard today, and it hasn't skipped a beat. Knock on fake wood. Headed to dump our 5th and last load to the elevator of the day. About 3 months ago, we would have been lucky to get 2 loads a day. Now we're the only ones hauling in here. 57.5 pounds test weight, 15.2% moisture. So there's a little bit of variation as we go through the bin. Pretty much got everything around the pit cleaned up, so I'm not going to make any more of a mess. They close at 4:30. It's about 3:58. They like to have the last truck in by 4 so they can batten down the hatches, close up all the pits. Let me tell you, I'm not trying to keep these people here any longer than they have to, nor am I trying to work any longer than I have to. So really, it's a mutually beneficial relationship that I get this last load in and let everyone go home, myself included. Last fill up of the day. We'll take this one home loaded and leave it overnight. That's good. I don't think we can really have any complaints with our level of productivity today. Between Jeff and I, we've pulled 15 loads of corn out of that bin, and I started late because I had to go get that truck tested, help Jeff get unstuck a few times. That 15 loads equates to close to 13,000 bushels of corn. At current over the scale cash prices, right around $7.75, that would make that easily worth $100,000 today. So we moved $100,000 of corn out of that bin today, and I'd say we're just a little bit over halfway done with it. We need the money coming in though, because it takes a lot to buy this John Deere iron. About as quickly as we were taking our income producing grain out of the bin, it was going out the door because we're putting nitrogen on all of our corn as we speak, and that side dress bar is spending a lot of money. It's all being custom applied by Helena north of Mattoon. I'm gonna go ahead and let some footage roll here and just talk over it. As you can see, Helena's out right now with their beautiful John Deere setup, side dressing our corn with 32% liquid UAN solution, which is about 3.5 pounds of nitrogen per gallon, as well as 3.5 gallons of ammonium thiosulfate, so we can get that added sulfur component. Over the last few years, we've seen very solid, consistent data that shows that split applying our nitrogen is significantly better in terms of yield and really bringing up the bottom end versus just putting it all on in the fall with anhydrous ammonia. Although anhydrous ammonia is a much more cost-efficient form of N, especially when applied in the fall, we see that we've really been able to bring up our corn averages by spreading out our nitrogen. I believe this is because if you put it all in the fall, you're really not hedging your bet or insuring yourself against a very wet spring and early summer, which results in a lot of nitrification and subsequently nitrogen leaching. Because it's been in the ground so long, you're asking a lot out of your soil. You only have so many cation exchange sites to hold on to those nitrogen molecules. There's also a large amount of biological activity that really speeds up as the soil temperature warms. They metabolize that ammonium, the positively charged cation that binds to the soil. They like to switch it over to nitrate, which is a negatively charged ion. A negatively charged ion is not going to stay bound to a negatively charged soil particle. It's just like two negative ends on a magnet. They're going to repulse from each other. Once that nitrate is out into the soil solution, large amounts of rainfall will wash that down to the ground. We've had years where putting all of our nitrogen on in the fall has not limited our yield. However, we've also had a lot of years where I think we've limited our top end potential because we had it all on in the fall in the form of anhydrous ammonia. We had some very wet springs, and we didn't have anything coming in later to really save us. We moved away from an all fall application. We're still putting on 116 pounds of actual N with anhydrous ammonia in the fall. We are making use of a few biological inhibitors to slow that transition from ammonium to nitrate in the soil. The biggest thing though is adding in the second pass of 32% UAN in the spring. This year we're coming back on all of our acres with a minimum of 100 pounds of actual N applied through this 32% UAN. The reason for using the 32% is just because it is easier to handle, it is safer, and it's just more efficient overall, especially when you consider logistics. Anhydrous ammonia is a fantastic product, extremely rich in nitrogen, though it is much more complicated and dangerous to handle. You have to pull pressurized tanks through the field, whereas this 32% is purely just a liquid. It can be hauled in just a regular tender trailer. Even with the price of nitrogen jumping up higher, we actually bumped up our total nitrogen program this year because we are trying to make use of these very high new crop grain prices. Though it's going to cost more to produce a bushel of corn, a bushel of corn is worth a lot more. Last year, we put 80 pounds of nitrogen on all of our ground, and we put 100 pounds on the best ground. So we had an extra 20 on acres we thought were the most productive. My data showed that the farms where we shaved off that 20 pounds because we didn't think they were as productive yielded about 10 to 15 bushel an acre less than the farms where we put on the extra 20. Our logic this year is that we think that that 20 pounds would have made a financial difference. We're going 100 pounds on every acre no matter what. And on our best acres, which is about 3/4 of our production, we're going 120 pounds. So we've really gained 20 pounds minimum of nitrogen versus last year. And it's just kind of what we're doing to push this yield a little bit. We want to take advantage of these grain prices. As I also mentioned, we are throwing in 3.5 gallons of ATS or ammonium thiosulfate It does have ammonium in it, but that's not really what we're going for. We're looking for the sulfur component. People believe that our level of sulfur in the soil is not near as high as it used to be, and it's actually a very vital nutrient for a highly productive corn acre. Most of the data shows that a 240 bushel corn crop needs about 18 pounds of sulfur. This 3.5 gallons of ATS should give us about 10 pounds of sulfur, I believe. So it will bridge that gap somewhat, and we're hoping the rest can be found in the soil. There is also very limited and not consistent evidence that the sulfur component, or adding that ATS to that 100 pounds of nitrogen we're applying, somehow stabilizes the nitrogen. No one is really sure exactly how it works or if it's even true that that's the case, but they believe when you add in that extra sulfur with the nitrogen you're applying, it allows it to stay bound to the soil for longer. It makes it less subject to leaching, and therefore you're getting more out of your N applied. I'm sure everyone's wondering why we're not applying this nitrogen ourselves, why we're paying to have it custom applied, and that's a great question. Personally, I would like to do it just to have some more field work to be done. The boss, though, my dad, believes in the flexibility of having someone else do it. You're really not saving that much money by the time you account for labor, tractor wear and tear, depreciation, fuel, tendering cost, trailer cost, all those things together. It's probably a break-even process at best. And we can go do other things like haul corn from our grain bins. I can almost certainly guarantee that we could not put on our fall anhydrous ammonia for what we are charged to do it. And that's why we don't put on our fall. Our spring, we could probably come closer in terms of finances. Same with the spraying. I know that's a common question that a lot of you have. Why don't we spray our own? Because at this time, we don't feel like we have the acres to justify it, nor is our employee structure set up in a way where we could handle it. We'd have to make some shifts in terms of how we farm, the logistics, and all that jazz. As it was predicted, the rain is here first thing in the morning. Take a look at those Don Mario 3.7 beans. Now that's a beautiful field. Jeff and I have a loaded semi of corn to take. I don't think we're going to be able to haul any more beyond that today with the moisture we have now and what's coming. Helena's rained out, I would assume. Got a little bit of mud on the 32 bar. Hopefully that was just a wet spot and not them mudding their way out of the field. I would imagine that they ran pretty hard last night to make use of this window. I could only guess how late they ran. It is pretty cumbersome though, running product like this, because you have to have an applicator, you have to have someone running the tender truck, and you also have to have someone running the mixing and the loading side of things. So really, whoever gives out first is going to be how they quit. But I think he got rained out, or he started this morning and got rained out. The trend we followed since about mid-May seems to be continuing. Of the half-inch they were forecasting this morning, we ended up with just 0.1 total, so 20% of what they called for. Now there is more moving in here in the near future. It is early afternoon. Because we missed the majority of that rainfall, we're both going to have the side dress bars running and try and haul some more corn. Try to get some productivity, because with the humidity we have right now, the temperature and the wind, highly, highly likely that a storm brews up pretty quickly. You can just feel it in the air. That doesn't look very promising over there to the southwest. Probably miss us at the grain bin and hit the side dress bar about 5 miles west of our main farm. Oh, they've actually got us dumping in the fancy pit today. They've been doing a lot of elevator maintenance over the last few weeks. This is the newer side of the facility. Things are getting worn out from the millions of bushels run through here the last few years. It was raining to the west on the way to the elevator. Now it's raining to the east on the way back to the bins. The next one should be right in the middle. I may have written off the water damage too soon. That last load, 53.5 pound test weight at 15.6% moisture. Low density corn, probably nitrogen stress, root damage, fertility issue of some kind. The plant did not perform where we would like it to, which is kind of what I was expecting. Those earlier loads could have been from a different part of the field. They had settled higher up in the bin or lower in the bin, and because of it, the weights are different as we get through different levels. We're getting close to needing the sweep auger. Not quite yet though. Feels like a refrigerator in here because we moved so much cold air in here when it was cold outside with the fans. That way it would stay with good quality for as long as possible. Really, with it being this temperature coming out of here, you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about it spoiling anytime soon. Things can change pretty fast though, and you'd rather have it in someone else's bin than yours. This nice cold air is actually pretty refreshing compared to the hot and humid weather outside. We're 2 doors down now. All we need to do is be 3 doors down and we can start a band. Unfortunately, this is our only 36-foot diameter grain bin that does not have a power sweep installed in it. We have a 2-piece, we put the screw in, and then we'll bring the motor in on top of that. It's very heavy, that's why it's in 2 pieces. If it was the sweep and the motor at the same time, probably have to have some cortisone shots when we're done moving it. This is guaranteed to be the last that I load of the day. Elevator's closed now. Fill this one up. Jeff's gonna be coming back empty. We'll probably have to put the sweep in on the tail end of my load or at the beginning of Jeff's load. Regardless, it's nice to have it in at the end of the day. That way you don't have to fool around with it at the beginning of the day. Things tend to be lighter about 4 o'clock in the afternoon than they are at 8 o'clock in the morning.
See your metal hole?
No, it's completely covered up.
Huh?
It's completely covered. I mean, I could speculate where it is.
Down right there.
Wind sure has picked up. The corn hasn't completely stopped running in terms of gravity coming off the sides. We're just trying to get the sweep set up tonight. That way whenever we start fresh, we don't have to do all this manual labor. The problem is, there's still a lot of corn trying to make its way down. At this point, more than anything, it's just a waiting game. The real question is going to be, can we get the sweep auger seated before the truck is full? Because it's the last empty we have of the day. Not sure what good a mass does if I keep taking it off. That'll do it for tonight. You think he'll stop when he hits me, or do I need to honk the horn? Folks, I didn't have plans to be in a semi-truck both days, but that's kind of what happened. I was going to do some other stuff, but we can do that next video. I'm satisfied with where our crop's at and all the grain we've gotten hauled over the last couple days. That being said, I think that's more than enough farming for one video. I do appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!